It's one of the most important elections in D93's history.
We're not making threats. We're looking and saying, if we don't have these dollars, we have to make cuts, and these are the areas we can cut. And so we're not trying to create fear among our population or trying to force people to vote. It's just the reality of what dollars we have.
The district is asking for voter approval to renew its existing local levies. If they fail, drastic changes could be coming to D93 when school starts up again next fall.
In the next few minutes, we'll tell you everything you need to know to make an informed decision when you vote in the May 18th election. Hello and welcome to part 2 of our special election coverage. In part 1, we talked about what exactly is on the ballot, and we focused in on what this means for music and PE programs here in D93 that were brought back 4 years ago with the supplemental levy.
And today we are taking a closer look at ESSER funds and extracurricular activities. ESSER stands for Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief. This is part of the federal government's response to COVID. There's a group in our area that says the district should use these ESSER funds instead of the levies.
We brought that suggestion to D93's Chief Financial Officer, Guy Wangsgard, and to Superintendent Wolstenhume.
We've heard lots of things, but until we know, it's hard to make those decisions. It's one-time money coming from the federal government. In meetings that I've listened to, they have stressed that it should be used for one-time expenditures, not ongoing expenditures. And so it's really taking everything the federal government has said, everything the state legislature has said, and then when it comes down to it, we have to spend the money. Then we have to turn in a reimbursement request to the State Department, telling them what we spent it on, and if they approve, they send us the money. If they don't approve, they don't spend the money, and we have to find a different way to backfill those funds.
Those funds are really intended to help our kids. They're intended to help our kids meet the additional learning loss that we've experienced over the last year and through the shutdown last year. One other thing that has just become very apparent in our district is the need for us to better support students' social, emotional learning, and health. That's why we've created a position at the district level for a director of social, emotional learning that will be completely funded through these dollars that are intended very specifically to address those needs. We've had some very preliminary discussions on what else can we do, and we've had some discussions. We need to have more social workers that could really go out and meet with students, help them work through whatever challenges that they're facing. So the reality is, if we have to use these funds to backfill what our patrons have historically supported in the district, it's going to impact our kids. It's going to have a huge impact on our ability to help and support those kids. And that's why I'm very hopeful and optimistic that our patrons will support that historical support they've given to our district to say these things matter and we're willing to step up and contribute.
Superintendent Wolstenhume tells us ESSER funds have specific permitted uses, and so it cannot simply replace lost funding from local levies. For example, there is no provision in the federal guidelines to use the funds for extracurricular activities, but they do allow the district to keep current staff employed.
There is also 20% set aside that districts must use to specifically address loss of learning in student social, emotional learning and support. So school districts will have to show how they are using funds for those specific purposes.
Further, the state does not simply send these dollars to school districts. Instead, school districts have to spend money from their accounts and then submit a reimbursement request to the state. Now, only 67% of those funds are available to districts until the state's plan is approved by the U.S. Department of Education. These factors make it very challenging to use as an operating budget instead of a supplemental levy budget as it is intended to be used.
D93 has discussed using ESSER 3 ARP funds to backfill the loss of the emergency levy, which is manageable and would fit within the allowable uses, but the district cannot replace the entirety of the loss of the supplemental and the plant facility levies with these dollars, even though the total dollars match somewhat closely. This is why extracurricular activities are on the table with this election.
Because we know, and I'll just talk about my own kids. My own kids get impacted if we have to lose our extracurricular programs. They're not standout athletes, but they found extracurricular programs that really benefit them in music and in performing arts. other district leaders here have their kids that are participating in these activities as well. So when we talk about this potential of having to lose those activities, it hits very close to all of our hearts, and that's the last thing we want to do. And because that really does create this opportunity for kids that's motivating for them to be in school, that provides positive interactions both with adults and with other kids outside of school. As a very unsuccessful student athlete back in my day, I learned a lot of things out on those fields and on the courts that I never learned in the classroom, and those were so helpful and beneficial to me. And that's sort of the last that we want to do. But we have to have the funding to do it. And so and that's one of the challenges is, as we look at these federal dollars and we look at the guidance that has been provided to us, providing extracurricular programs is not one of the allowed expenses, and so it's going to be very difficult for us to say we can use those federal dollars to continue those things. So I think that's a great point, Phil, is if we don't have those other programs that really do help support kids' social emotional well-being, then it's going to be even more critical that we have that extra support that happens in the classroom. But I'd love to just see us be able to continue those programs for our kids.
Well, there you have it in a nutshell. We hope this has been helpful as you consider the facts before voting in the May 18th election. You can find these videos and more information about the levy renewal election on our website.
We'll also be hosting a special D93 Live to answer any questions you might have. Watch for D93 Live presented by Lookout Credit Union on Thursday, May 13th at 8 p.m. right here on the D93 Facebook page.
We'll see you next time on D93 News.